All right. Before we begin, I've had the thumbnail created for a really long time, right? The thumbnail for this video was first created all the way back in April of this year, right? And I don't think it was that long after, like, he had another bad take. But we're going to cover this one, right? Because, yeah, there's just a lot. There's two videos, so strap in if you want to stick around. It's going to be 2 videos worth that we're going to be covering. He did one yesterday, and now he's done another one today. Let's go.
Some kind of tragic news happened earlier today, and it's not exactly news yet. It's effectively a rumor, so we need to discuss where that's coming from, why everybody's talking about it, and the cultural relevance therein. And it's about Mortal Kombat 1. So one thing I'm going to say is that this leads up to a bit of history of why people are talking about this and why I'm immediately like, kind of saw that shit coming. Not that long ago, there was a big, I think, investors meeting at Warner Brothers.
Isn't it amazing how everyone is like, you know, as soon as the ship starts sinking, all the rats start jumping. I'm not calling him a rat, I'm just saying that this is how it works, right? Shill's gonna shill, and I'm not calling him a shill either. I know some people call Max a shill, but like, I don't think he's a shill, but I think he's just... Isn't he Californian? You know what happens over in California, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, also, by the way, somebody mentioned this once before. They said Max was apparently responsible for the women looking less sexy in Killer Instinct. Is that true?
Specifically, we're talking about how they are massively underperforming this year, and they don't entirely have anything in the next year or so that is going to bring them back. The head of Warner Brothers made a plan, and that plan moving forward for the Warner Brothers game division was to no longer work on small-scale projects that are effectively going to maybe not return them that much money. A reminder, this is nothing new. This is the exact same thing that Square Enix is currently doing. It's the exact same thing that Bandai Namco is currently doing. Several companies are doing the same thing, where they're kind of squandering a lot of cash on these games and marketing them, and their concepts aren't entirely things that are super on board with their...
Well, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. The fact that a lot of these companies also have spent a huge amount of money and time in hiring activists to push agendas, right? Now, I'm not saying it's with every case, but ultimately what we're seeing across the board is companies finally ditching massive parts of their hired folk with their primarily to fix stuff for the Western modern audience.
Audiences, and they don't hit, and all of a sudden, whoosh, they're just losing way too much money. Effectively, WB was like down, I think, in the terms of like hundreds of millions of dollars as a result of not so great decision making. So the problem...
Why was the decision making? Let's see if he says it.
Problem is, at that point, they are like, hey, so we're going to focus on our hero franchises, just like those other companies. And they are specifically Game of Thrones, Batman. I think the term
Game of Thrones is dead.
Stated
no one gives a shit about Game of Thrones.
Harry Potter, like the Hogwarts games. And the other one is Mortal Kombat. That was the terms that were given. These are the 4 pioneering games of now
Nobody cares.
It's those
about
4.
Game of Thrones.
Some news dropped today. Related, now we're going to go back to what is related with Mortal Kombat 1. There was an individual, a Reddit user, and people are like, why is everybody listening to this guy? Well, if you go back and you look at the person's post history, that goes into like years, like almost like 2 years of talking about MK1. This person definitely has insider info and has a relatively decent track record of giving some information about the game early. I don't particularly like to talk about that stuff, but the writing has been on the wall for a while, and I think that writing on the wall regarding this was that post from the CEO, was the whole display of this is where we're moving forward with our franchises. Another thing...
Is he actually going to explain in these 2 videos why Mortal Kombat has failed?
Another reminder, Mortal Kombat 1 had its big-ass massive DLC. That DLC came out in September. It didn't even chart top 20 in PlayStation from what I recall. Maybe that changed? Maybe it didn't? But even games like Marvel vs. Capcom Collection, a bunch of old 20-year-old games, managed to chart that month. There's a large variety of reasons for that. It's $50. It's to a game that not everyone's super committed to. Maybe the DLC wasn't entirely worth it. They made it that you had to buy all the DLC characters and not entirely one. Maybe the DLC story didn't get particularly good, a warm reception, you know, sure. But the point of the story is that it did not make it. Like a Mortal Kombat add-on didn't make it. And that's where the news is coming from an insider source. And this is just
because they thought that they could stiff the MK fan base by putting out garbage. That's what they thought they could do, right?
Rumor, but it does come from people that have a pretty credible list of rumors that eventually come true. Apparently MK1 is effectively done after this season, where we might get a couple more updates in terms of like characters, just maybe. There might be a couple more cameos added to the game, but Conan or T1000, whoever ends up being the last character in MK Season 2, it's effectively done at that point. And yeah, I get it. The developers have said differently. They definitely have approached this and been like, we have 3 years worth of content. Yeah, here's the thing. They're not lying to you, because that was the plan until a wrench gets thrown in the picnic basket and everything's screwed, and it's kind of over.
This happened with MK11.
It was going to sell and hit numbers and stuff like that. This is not confirmed information yet, but it makes a lot of sense based on what was been talked about, based on how the company was reacting over the past month, the way they were talking about the future of their franchises and things like that. To me, a lot of things seemed like they were lining up, and especially with the game not specifically doing great in its launch month, which is when it should be doing the best. Now, what happens going forward, right? So what happens to MK1 going forward? I see a lot of folks saying this is the chance. We got 2 Mortal Kombats in a row, right? 2 MKs in a row. Okay. 2 MKs in a row.
No, it's both dog shit.
Cool. Some people happy about that. Some people not particularly happy about that. But you're about to get a 3rd MK in a row. Why is that? Everyone's like, well, what about Injustice 3? Did you not just hear the 4 games that they're working on? When it came to DC properties...
So nobody gives a fuck about superhero shit anymore, right? You can thank Marvel and DC for ruining any sort of hype with superhero stuff by going and following down the woke agenda, right? You screwed your own pooch, right? People have superhero fatigue. Something like Injustice 3 is not going to sell. Nobody cares anymore. Right? The fighting games that seem to be selling the most, or doing well the most, or procuring a solid foundation, or keeping their solid foundation with the fan base, are fighting games like Street Fighter, or new up-and-comers like Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising, Melty Blood, that sort of one, or Under Night 2, or whatever it is. These games, right, they're keeping their core fan base around. That's why Street Fighter 6 is selling so well. Tekken 8 has had nothing but controversy ever since it came out, because it changed everything from its core gameplay from the entire Tekken series, to what they have now. And then all the monetization stuff came in.
There's no, like, Suicide Squad anymore. When it came to DC properties, there's no Batman game. We don't even know where the heck the Wonder Woman game is. That's got to eventually come out. An entire DC licensed, like, you know, not licensed, but an entire DC game, once again, was not listed there. It was Mortal Kombat. Based on what the CEO is literally saying, there would not be another Injustice. It would be another Mortal Kombat. They would effectively have to make a new MK at some point. So no, I do not think it's going to be Injustice 3. I don't. See, I wouldn't specifically want a sequel to Injustice 2. I don't know if I want that. Some content in that game is very good, but playing that game is not good. However, I think there's a fun game.
Every game made under fucking NRS is not good. Every single fighting game. Clunky, stiff, janky, just rubbish animation. Like whoever is in fucking charge of the animation over there, something needs to change. Every other fighting game out there seems to have smooth, beautiful animation, right? They need to do away with this hyper-realistic look to the characters, go back to something much more, you know, I don't know, just something, even if it's more over the top, right? But take it away, like, it's gone too far. And the animation, like I said, it's just the worst of the worst. It just feels yuck.
That can really be had there. There's actually a really cool game that you can turn that into. The chance of a Mortal Kombat versus DC Maybe, but you have to also realize that
That'd
comes with
tank.
a very risky road. It needs to be Mortal Kombat
It'd
in
die.
the title, and don't get me wrong, I think if we're talking from a personal standpoint, Injustice 3 would be neat. It was not what I would choose. I think the obvious route of them going is just the next MK, like an MK13. That makes the most sense. They're just gonna try again and not make all the same mistakes that they made with Mortal Kombat 1 for whatever reason that happened. Clearly a compromised development for that game in many ways. But I think for me personally,
Why, Max? Why is that? Can you explain?
I kind of hope that there's a room for a crossover at some point. That there is.
Listen, man. Listen. I know you're probably almost as old as I am, so I'll make it real clear, considering Gen X can usually handle it. Nobody wants that fucking shit, alright? Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants a crossover, right? The crossover days are over, right? We need to get fighting games, especially Mortal Kombat, back to its basics before we even think about some hybrid game in 1,000 years' time.
Is actually a room for proper MK versus DC game. But I don't know. You know, I don't. It would likely never be a team game because some casual fans obviously didn't like this stuff. It's not a good situation.
Casual fans. You mean the fan base that keeps these games alive. Not the hardcore. Not the esports dick shits. Not the fucking, oh my god, I can do a 500,000 hit combos. Not those people. The casuals. You mean the normal Mortal Kombat fans that didn't ask for some stupid assist game, right? Would have been perfectly happy if you actually made it a proper tag game if you were going to go down that road like they had tag in MK9. Nobody asked for this shit. Casuals, or as I like to call them, as I just said, true Mortal Kombat fans, they're the ones that want to buy Mortal Kombat games. They don't give a shit about this crap.
I think they can get themselves out of this because here's the thing. I see a lot of folks blaming NRS for these problems. I have to remind people how the order of operations works. NRS is not the ones that chose that stuff to be in the game. NRS is not the one that...
What do you mean they didn't choose it? What? At what point? At what fucking point does the developer take responsibility? Man, fuck this shit. Right, this is the same shit. This is like, oh, it's all Warner Brothers' fault. Everything about the game, it's all Warner Brothers' fault. We're just not talking about monetization here. We're talking about the very foundation of the creation of the characters. What they do with the fatalities. Even all of that shit. We got all of these stages in the game and not a single stage fatality in there. But, you know, it's all Warner Brothers' fault.
That chose when the game was going to come out to effectively cover the lost profit of other games like potentially Suicide Squad. That is not...
You know, this is the equivalent of a female licking around the tip and never... deep throating, basically. Tease, tease, tease. He's just skirting around the edges.
NRS's choice, dude. How to monetize the game, what the DLC is going to cost, if they're going to release skins, how those skins are going to be monetized. I'm going to tell you right now.
That's not the
NRS
only
is
issues,
a
bro.
Game dev. Publishers choose monetization. They choose how much their game is going
We're
to
not just
cost.
talking about
They choose
monetization.
how much they are going to monetize which parts of it. That is entirely a WB-ness sort of situation. To be real, it already felt like clearly MK1 was a compromised game in some way. Something happened where they did...
In some way. In some way. The fucking ending for Liu Kang had him literally going to the, essentially what I considered, and I think most, the original, the great Kung Lao. We thought that Mortal Kombat, the next one, was going to be a prequel game to, I would have hoped, to explain how everything came to be. But no, they just did another retelling of Mortal Kombat 1 and fucked it in almost every conceivable way.
Did not get the appropriate resources or time in order to create...
The multi-million-dollar developer and the multi-billion-dollar company somehow don't have the cash.
the experience that they probably wanted to. And that was clear from the launch of the game. and it's still clear to this day. Do you think that the folks that are literally making the game do not realize that? No, they know it more than anybody. I get it, fans are pissed about this stuff, and yeah, granted, I am as well. I don't really want to play this game online because it's rough and it has many issues. You have to realize that even from a game development standpoint, they know that, and they're effective.
I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just tired of these horseshit, bullshit excuses, right? He obviously has more insight and whatnot when it comes to game development, but to simply state that the entire fucking studio has no responsibility. Oh, they're all just mad. They don't look mad, you know, when they're putting out their fucking little Kombat cast. They don't look mad when they put out their lame 30th anniversary video. They don't look mad when Ed Boon's being interviewed about this stuff, and he's so happy because we got a new gimmick. Right?
Allocating whatever resources they can to keep the project going. I really hope that we can get another game from NetherRealm Studios or another Mortal Kombat. It doesn't even need to specifically cater to my needs, but it...
Here we go. I fucking hate this shit. This is the problem, right? Midway, despite, like, the Mortal Kombat team, right? Now, maybe somebody can correct me. The Mortal Kombat team under Midway made Mortal Kombat games. They didn't make anything else. You hire a whole other bunch of people to go make that shit somewhere else. And you leave MK stuff to MKP. I told you how I can fix this game. I'll do it for free. Right? He doesn't even care. He doesn't give a shit. This is how fucked NetherRealm are. This is why I can't stand NRS fanboys. Ah, I don't care. It's another NetherRealm game. Right? Nobody gives a shit, bro.
Needs to alleviate these problems and be given ample development time, because that's clear what MK1 was missing. From the very first moment I touched that game at Summer Games Fest, I was mad concerned, dude. And it was like, oh, okay, so this is what we're doing? And it's like, yeah, it's got combos and air combos. That is cool, but why does it run?
Listen, I'm not against combos. But these people that are obsessed, like, the first thing that comes out of their head is combos. Not character design, not story, not fucking special moves. Combos.
Run so bad. That's the news. The news is that MK1, from a very credible source, and a rumor is saying that the game is effectively done after its second season, and they're just gonna most likely move on to the next project after that. I enjoy MK1 more than I enjoyed MK11 and Injustice 2. I'm having more fun with an NRS game, and I've played that game more with my friends than I have any NRS game since Mortal Kombat X.
Didn't this guy say he had mad concerns with this game?
To give the game some credit. Does it alleviate the other issues? No, and that's a separate thing I want to talk about, like in another video, is the things I really liked about MK1 and the things that clearly were holding it back the entire time, and why those things were holding it back the entire time. I think it's kind of a bummer, and I think there's a chance you might get a big gameplay overhaul, because if this does come true, the end of MK11, Injustice 2, as well as MKX, the final months of the game effectively have a really big patch that kind of changes the way the whole game works. Like the systems of the game.
Why should we wait until the game has been fucking cancelled and they've got all our money, they've ripped us off for over a year, put out a shoddy product, and then didn't that fucking idiot Sloppy Seconds say the same stupid shit to me? Oh, the game gets better at the end, or some dumbass shit like that? What a fucking idiot. And all of those idiots in this shit right here. Imagine one fucking brain cell. And the only time you can literally say the game is good is when the game has been cancelled. I can't with these people. I can't. It's like buying a car with no wheels. You can sit in the thing, you can turn it on, you got the aircon, you can move the wheel. Can't go anywhere, right? And then right before they bring out a brand spanking new model, they go, by the way, here's the wheels. Aren't you grateful? Aren't you grateful? Right? Be grateful.
and how it works. If this was MK1, it would be something as crazy as like really opening up cameo usage. Just like the sort of limitations on cameos that some do have and some obviously don't have. I would not be surprised if that happens. I would not be surprised because that hasn't entirely happened to MK1 as of yet. One of the biggest mechanical changes they made was like the anti-air.
Cameos? Listen, come here. Max, cameos are gay. It's okay. I know you live in a gay state in America, I think, but they're gay.
Thing where they added that you can jump after and shit like that. Either way, I think it's a bummer because there's a lot of stuff in this game that is genuinely cool.
Careful, Max. If you don't use the right vernacular, the esports fucking idiots will come out of the woodworking. Hey, yeah, start right.
But there's so much holding it back, and I want to talk about those things personally, where it's like, yeah, I have so much fun with some characters in this game, especially as Season 2 started. The end of Season 1 into Season 2. As soon as Takeda came out, man, I was like, whoa, this game's actually super fun now. Peacemaker was also kind of the early sign of that. There's a lot of fun to be had, but I think giving them a fresh start and ample time to actually create...
Imagine, if you will. Right, what did he say? Imagine, if you will, that you need a DLC character that you got to pay extra for the game to be fun.
Early sign of that. There's a lot of fun to be had, but I think giving them a fresh start and ample time to actually create an experience that I think most of their fans want is good, but I feel legit bad for the developers in this situation. This isn't just one person, this isn't two people, these are like hundreds of people that are trying to make the best fighting game they can with most likely a very unfortunate situation. Consolidated deadlines or limited resources or having to...
I'm sorry, is NRS poor? Are they on food stamps? Multi-billion-dollar company backing the multi-million-dollar developer? Lack of resources! Man, this is bullshit. This is just skirting around. I don't give a fuck about their feelings. I don't give a fuck about time constraints. These people get paid on the daily. They got our money. Why the fuck should I care about their feelings or care about they really want to put out a product. Maybe they should have some damn integrity and fucking leave the company.
Compensate for other games that the publisher / studio that owns them is trying to also compensate for. It sucks, man. And everyone's being worked to the bone just for something that eventually just pisses a lot of people off, and they know it's going to do that. I legit sympathize with them in that situation. So I only hope that if given the opportunity, if this does effectively end early, what is this life cycle in comparison? This would be the exact same life cycle as an MKX, as a Injustice 2 or Injustice 1. MK11 had a bit longer, had about an extra year. It was like 2 years to 2.5 years of supported game dev. All their other games are a year to a year and a half tops. That's it. MK11 was the only one that got that extended period of time. And I could definitely see why WB would want to sort of like cut the umbilical cord right now. Just cut it and start over. Let's just do something else. We're not, and especially after the second DLC, if it did not perform as good as it did, they're just like, cut the umbilical cord, we're going to start over and do a new one. And I do think it is really shitty that it's a third Mortal Kombat in a row with no deviation. There was a reason why NRS was doing other games. There was a reason why they tried Injustice. They did not just want to do the same thing over and over again, regardless of whether or not I like it more than Mortal Kombat. They wanted to challenge themselves in other ways, you know? And I get that. It's like, okay, so yeah, there's a sort of a break here. They might not get that based on the way the CEO's talking.
The problem with NRS is that they could not let one game not affect the other. It's as simple as I can make it. They let Injustice infect Mortal Kombat because we saw that going into Mortal Kombat 10, not the other way around. The reason why MK9 was the last great Mortal Kombat, by the way, developed by Midway, not NetherRealm, right? Is because it wasn't infected by anything else. MK9 was the MK Midway team looking at the 3D era going, people don't really want this, let's get back to basics, right? Unfortunately, I think they hired some esports people, and that's why the gameplay is so loved by them, because they get to do whatever they want, right? The game needs to be completely scaled all the way back to the 2D era. Like, I mean the literal 2D era.
And the closest we get is an MK versus DC situation. But the problem with MK versus DC always is
won't
that
sell.
it doesn't have the extremely mainstream appeal of the Blood and Guts that has effectively been tied to Mortal Kombat, brought it success, and also held it down in many ways. Also has prevented it from getting the limelight in certain situations because it is ultra violent. It's like the most violent game on the market.
I don't agree with that.
And you can't.
I don't agree with the fact that it's held it back. It's made it very successful for what it is. It's why it still sells well, even when it's a shit game. The problem is the degrees that it's gone to, right? And you can put Mortal Kombat characters in other games. That's perfectly fine, right? It's just that under NRS, it doesn't work. NRS is just garbage, right? Now, from memory, yeah, so MK vs. DC, was that was a Midway game, I believe, right? That came out between Armageddon and MK9. So I think MK vs. DC really tanked, you know, like people's hopes about Mortal Kombat, right? They didn't want a crossover. They wanted something that was just going to be like, when did MK vs. DC come out? I can't remember the date. MK vs. DC came out 2008. So that was a good couple of years after Armageddon, right? And people had had enough, and they're like, man, we just want Mortal Kombat back.
Do that to Batman. You're not going to be able to do that to Harley and shit like that and just cut him in half. And I think that's a challenge. I think for me, again, as someone that's not attached to that stuff nearly as much anymore, no, I don't really care about it much anymore. I would love to see those characters fight each other. I'd love to see Scorpion and Batman fight each other again.
Why, dude? What is so appealing about these two characters fighting together? None. There isn't any. It doesn't make sense for these two universes to be together, right? Now, you can make the same argument, say Marvel vs. Capcom or X-Men vs. Street Fighter, but I know it's weird, again, because Mortal Kombat has the blood and stuff. I can see his point in that. But at the same time, we don't need a fucking crossover. They can't even do it right with DLC guest characters. Because we never asked for that shit. And that's Warner Brothers doing. We never asked for that garbage.
I'd love to see those characters like butt heads. I think that's a perfect situation for me personally, but it is not entirely an end-all be-all. That's what they should do.
Thank God you're not in charge of Mortal Kombat. Anyway, you got this video here too.
Things. Just to solidify where my stance is on MK1. I've obviously been playing MK1 off and on for ever since it came out, but I've gone through some pretty big gaps in between because the DLC characters weren't really, you know, jiving for me. But as soon as Takeda came out, oh boy, this is amazing. Like, oh my God. And then other characters that have come out since then are really fun. I think Ghostface is a...
This literal mindset, by the way, is the reason why Mortal Kombat is fucking dead. Not only do you require a DLC character to get you excited, out of the 20 plus characters they had in the base roster, right? Has this guy ever talked about, like, has he ever talked about how bad the DLC is? Has he ever talked about, you know, the impact of DEI and stuff like that? Probably not. Right? Because this guy, these people like this, they don't look at a fighting game and go, is the whole package complete? They look at a fighting game and they go, I need a main, maybe a backup, and that's all I care about. They don't care about anything else. That's why NRS games are dog shit, because they cater to those sorts of people. That's why Mortal Kombat is garbage, because they cater to those sorts of people.
Amazing. So, several elements in MK1 didn't hit for me at the start in the roster, specifically in choosing a character. I just did not jive with any character in the game, and I was sort of waiting for that. But still, even that being said, I played the game more in those first 3 months than I had played almost MK11 in its entirety, dude. Because it was kind of a fun game to play. It had clearly some issues with like assist calling and the way it felt and input problems and all that stuff.
Yeah, so apart from like all of these catastrophic problems in the game, this is what I mean. This is what I mean. They just excuse it.
But at least it was like something I even wanted to put my time into and enjoy myself, right? Outside of only checking out like DLC and not playing it at all outside of that. My dude, I've played like Steve and Kenny on their streams when they're streaming. I see them streaming MK. I'll jump on and play matches with them. I don't do that for a ton of games, man. I really don't. MK1 is one of those games that I'm like, yeah, I just want to play this right now. I just want to jam on some MK1, sure. That wasn't the case for Injustice 2. That wasn't the case for MK11. It was not, at least for me. So there's some gameplay stuff in the game that is pretty fun. However, it was always held down by, I'd argue, the worst feeling NRS game out there. A game with some cool ideas, but not great execution. The cameo system, I like the idea for it. And then eventually how you do it, not good. Do not like. It's gotten better, but not good, do not like.
No, it's never gotten better. It's dog shit, right? As I have explained many times before, right? Cameo is essentially a combo extenders, right? And combo resetters, meaning that before you get to that maximum amount of damage, or not the max damage like in this game, because that's like over 700 damage. There's again, I've already mentioned this before. There's a Scorpion tutorial, right, where you try and do this combo, and the final hit is this spear, and it flattens them out to indicate you cannot do anything more after this. But the cameo allows you to reset that combo string over and over and over as long as you can keep the cameo engaged. Not to mention the fucking amount of damage. The scaling in this game is absolutely woeful, right? Cameos, what cameo should have been, Ed Boon's original design for cameos was this. He's like, oh, you know, we could have had like Sonya or someone have like a drone, but that doesn't make sense on Scorpion. It's like, dickhead, you don't put the drone on Scorpion, you give Scorpion his own thing. It could be a fucking summoned demon, right? That enhances him. And I think in this instance, they don't know how to do like assist combat. What they should have done is made every assist in the game apply to your character. For example, Scorpion's like Hell Demon that he can summon or something, whatever, might apply a burning effect to you. So when they hit you and you hit them, they're burning and they're taking damage, right? Or a dot damage, like damage over time. You could have also had, you know, it would give you abilities. So it actually gives you like, say, a fireball that you can use once, stuff like that. Have the cameo or the assist directly influence your character, not be part of the combo and not some character that runs out. Have it like some sort of thing that's like in the background. Sub-Zero, another perfect example. He could have like a floating orb, an ice orb, that depending on what he does, activates, and he can wield a sword or an axe or a shield or a bow, right? These things could have been easily done, referenced directly to the character's own lore and history and makeup, and make perfect sense. But no, they were gay.
Like, the only way I can really compare this to other games, I think I literally have to bring up MK11. So MK11, and I'll give you guys a visual example. We did this before. MK11 introduced the cameo system, right? Literally had, in some modes, the ability for you to call in other characters and for them to do exclusive moves. So it's like tied to the analog stick, the right analog stick, up, down, left, right would do different things. Bam, character comes in and does something. But there was no posing. There was no awkward, long animation that the characters effectively had to take in order to do it. MK1 was designed with different constraints. Clearly, we don't want that overall, right? You just don't want a whole game that is effectively poseless, what they call ambush cameos, the entire time. We don't want that.
You know, I'm watching this gameplay, and the cameos look way better. How does the cameo system in MK11 look way better? You want to know why? Because you're not jumping all over the screen like a fucking superhero, because that's what Injustice 3 was, that's what Mortal Kombat 1 was going to be. Mortal Kombat 1 was going to be Injustice 3, right? And that's why we're flying all over the screen. They didn't lift constraints because they were these wonderful people. It was an entirely different game they were working on that they changed mid-cycle.
That game would be absolutely effed up. But I think the fact that the game at a core level, at an early design state, probably didn't get the time for them to figure out how they wanted to create a game that had assists and stuff like that is weird to me, because they feel so weird to use. They feel like worse versions of almost like MVC1 assists. And if I go back and think of MVC1, yeah, I love that game, but dude, if you could just call MVC1 assists willy-nilly and they have like a small recovery and you can bring them back, that game would be amazing. That game would be so much better. You wouldn't just be Colossus all the time, but it would be a significantly...
I know it's hard for some people to understand, but Mortal Kombat is literally a one-on-one fighting game. Like, it's part of the tournament. That's literally what it's based around. right? Nobody asked for a cameo assist Mortal Kombat game, right? Nobody. Nobody.
Better game if you didn't have to do the pose and then call a character in. Right off the bat, the game is given a design constraint of like these really specific cameos and how you call them and what you do with them, and they get more interesting over time, like the Movados and stuff like that. They have to be in juggling or something. Cool idea, but really it's like, no, this is not it. Like you had it working in a correct way in Mortal Kombat 11. Like we had it in a way that felt good, and I really don't understand like why the whole game wasn't sort of designed around that and expanded. It felt like it was designed around this and then contracted. And we're just gonna
because MK11 is a grounded. As much as I hate that game, MK11 is a grounded Mortal Kombat fighting game. You're not flying all over the screen like some tard, right? They needed cameos to be combo extenders. That's why they did it in this way. They had to integrate them into a way that essentially felt like an extension of your main character. If you notice in the gameplay with MK11 when he's calling out Sub-Zero, he's just calling him out to do like literal just different special moves, right? That you can throw out there, right? And it actually looked far more organic than what we got.
To make it worse. Right from the get-go, you have a game that was effectively designed to be this new, interesting, different thing that is not going to make casuals interested in your game, is only going to be effectively sort of for the super hardcore gameplay people. But even for the super hardcore gameplay people, you have a game that feels worse than MK11.
Let's just be honest here. It's for esports only pros. It's for the only pros, right? Because they're the only ones that get excited about this stuff. When the entirety of my fucking feed comes down to who's having sex with who in the timeline and gigantic combos for the latest Mortal Kombat game, no talk about story, no, just nothing else. It's just those two things. You have failed, right? And there's that word casuals again. It's not just casuals, bro. It's MK fans. No MK fan in their right mind asked for this garbage, right? Nobody. That's why Mortal Kombat did far better when it didn't have gimmicks back in the 2D era, and the 2D era felt like it was consistent both in legacy gameplay, in storytelling, and character design.
So there's what my biggest criticism is. Like, you have a very fun game that could have been here. MK1 could have been a very fun game, but it was always held back by like all these things. And I'm not even talking about content, right? I'm talking from a general gameplay standpoint of how the game works. I am not even addressing the fact that, yes, I jump into MK1 and there's a really fun character or a fun team, like with Cameo. Yeah, I want to go do this to some people. And then I relegate myself to playing MK1 online. And I'm reminded every single time how awful it is. And I don't just mean player behavior.
True.
I don't just mean like community thing. I just mean that is like icing on the cake of shittiness, where it's like, oh, now I gotta deal with this horrible matchmaking that lets me look at this menu. I'd argue NRS players or people that have been playing MK1 consistently and have played this shit since it came out, my dudes, you have seen that opening default stage menu thing where it says like connecting to matchmaking. Your ass has been looking at that for like a year. You have spent days of your life with that menu open looking for ranked matches and doing nothing else. Nothing. Hopefully you're making sandwiches and shit. The 2023-2024 version of Get Ready for the Next Battle, you're stuck there. And you just have to look at that shit, and you don't get to, there's no matchmaking during this, there's no matchmaking during that, you cannot train, you can't do any of that shit, dude. It's nuts. So I get in, and I play a game where the matchmaking takes forever, and I just want to play people. I spend the majority of my time, I swear to God, sitting at that goddamn menu and not playing people. And I'm like, this is not the way fighting games work, man. Like, it has always been something where it's like, yeah, I love these characters. They are really fun. I'm working beyond the obvious control issues that the game sort of has, that you got to acclimate to and get used to. I work beyond that because I'm really enjoying how the characters work and how the game effectively is. I like it. But even when I think of like, man, do I want to play Takeda in that? And it's like, well, You know what? I do not. I just want to go back to the MK1, the same relationship I had with MK11. What was my relationship with MK11? I almost never played ranked. I played room matches that allowed people to choose moves and stuff, because in the player matches, you didn't have to choose the variations. You can just freely choose variations, which they eventually did anyway. I did that for the entirety of the game. So I was like, sick! I'm just gonna do that instead. And I am not kidding you. You still cannot do that in MK1. I cannot open a lobby and just have people join it. Like, it is specifically by invite only. It is specifically by...
I would actually be in favor of them completely delisting Mortal Kombat 1 and memory holding that shit to the great, deep, dark abyss cavern of all time.
Like, accommodation, you have to go find the person, get them, put them in. There is so much, like, busy work I have to do, especially if, you know, all of our friends lists are full and shit. I have to effectively go, who wants to join? And I have to, like, look up their names and, like, add them. That wasn't that way before, dude. So there's no, like, traditional rooms. There's no way for you just to, like, hey,
the
I just want to fight my
best
chat for a
lobby
while.
was MK9.
The same way I always played MK11 online. Oh, I can't do that. And guess what happens? My desire to learn and play that character goes down and down and down. The investment I have to put in, you have to play so many of these fucking matches. Like, I played for, like, a couple days straight and I got to, like, Demigod or something like that. And I was like, do I want to keep doing this? It's like, oh my God, dude, I don't know if I do. I don't know if I do. That has always been an issue for me. I've had that relationship historically with other fighting games, like back in the day, Guilty Gear, like Xrd, right? Just Xrd in general. Game ran like butt online overall before it got fixed. And like the ranked matchmaking was almost non-existent, and you had to like go into rooms and get people in those rooms. But even if I got people into like the lobby rooms, they wouldn't work. So it was like, well, shit, every single time I try to do this, there's some weird problem. And now I have to specifically get into a room and invite these people and yada, yada, yada. So there was always something in the way of me just like playing the game. If there's one thing I have to give credit for, Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8, I have spent so much time in those games, hundreds of hours just in ranked. And the only reason I've been able to play that many hours in ranked is because I've just been playing people. I haven't been doing other bullshit trying to find matches and shit. I've just been finding matches. And when I'm not finding matches, I'm just practicing a combo. That goes by really quick. And then, I'm trying to finish a combo and I get a match. Oh man, I couldn't finish my combo. I got to get a match. So I'm not really thinking about how frustrated I am about like all this other shit that the game might not particularly be good at, because I'm just getting good at the game. You know, there's very little barrier in between your ability to like learn. And what is the thing you need to learn, people? You need to fight people, dude. You just need to fight a whole bunch of people and keep fighting them and find other people with better connections and stuff like that. That's just the way it is. It's designed in a way that makes sense for our current year. Everything in MK1 is not that way online, dude. Everything's like backwards. Everything feels like we went back to something that was like the mid 2010s. And it clearly is that way because they just didn't have the time to implement it in their new engine.
But you know, like even he says that mid 2010s, and yet in 2011 MK9 had full functioning lobbies. Right? MK10 had, or like rooms, whole lobbies, right? Like, even MK10 had that shit.
And all this stuff, you know? Everything regressed. So that's my thought process right now. That's clearly the things that, like, need to change. I could have several criticisms of, like, invasions and the gear and all that stuff, but it's all fluffy Barbie dress-up bullshit. Like, I think it's neat. I don't mind it in a certain way. The core gameplay loop just needs to be interesting, and I need to be able just to fight people. And
yeah, but that's the thing, though. Mortal Kombat isn't just about fucking the gameplay. It's a whole host of different things, right? The reason why they did all the Barbie dress-up shit, right, is because they introduced a gear system in Injustice 2. And then what happened? What did I already say? That Injustice infected Mortal Kombat. So then everything from Injustice 1 that was like jumping off crap or whatever and throwing things went into MK10. And then in Injustice 2, they introduced the gear systems, multiple pieces, so they could fucking RNG and farm people for that crap. And then, what did they do? They stuck that in MK11 and turned the entire game into a giant loot box. Everything from the crypt to the towers and stuff. Everything was just like, well, maybe not so much the towers, but like definitely the crypt, right? And then, of course, they would put the stuff in the store and go, well, you can bypass the time by giving us some real world money, right? It was just a shit show. I've said this before, we should just have standard skins related to the character. And that's it. Have a creator fighter with all the gear pieces you want, and then have the online part, obviously standard online, but also a mode like Conquest, which is now a fully fledged MMO type game. They need to hire somebody that can do that. I would easily be able to help them design and create that type of thing, because I play a ton of MMOs, I see how enjoyable they are, and in Mortal Kombat it would be a perfect fit, because the universe is just so big and vast, there's so many great characters, and you can do so much, and they've already done it, just offline with Conquest and Deception.
Have there not be that many obstacles in between. If I'm unlocking things and just doing stuff, yeah, that's awesome. Then great. The casual audience is going to love that. But for me personally, right, and I'm not going to speak for everybody because I know that's going to have to be a huge part of the next Mortal Kombat game. Those things aren't even important to me, dude. The most important thing to me was just getting cool characters that are cool, that are like either guest characters or returning characters, to do cool gameplay stuff, and I get to go online and do that cool gameplay stuff. There were several roadblocks that prevented me from even being able to do that. So yes, they can improve all these other things, but when the core gameplay loop, in my opinion, is compromised, we have a big problem, dude.
It's not just the core gameplay, you can have shit gameplay and amazing game around it. I can't stand 3D era combat, because Ed Boon's obsession with Tekken infiltrated that game from Deadly Alliance, right? But the rest of it feels like Mortal Kombat, so I can overlook the shitty gameplay for the rest of it, right? And most MK fans, from what I've gathered from YouTube comments and things that I've read, seem to be of the same opinion. That if you had this great mythical Asian tournament coming back again, you know, and moving away from guest characters, moving away from all the gore and torture porn fatalities, bringing it back to what we had in the Tobias era of MK, it'd be far better experience.
If it doesn't feel good, if there's like inherent issues with just the way it is, between either cameo usage in comparison to the previous game or whatnot, that's what I want to get changed. And I think the other thing I'll say, MK1 ended up feeling very samey. Everything sort of ended up happening in the exact same ways, just with different characters. If we're talking stories and things like that, or how characters look and how they play, many elements we were expecting to be wildly different, a brand new era, a brand new this, a brand new that. It was not. That was mostly marketing. That was supposed to be the appeal of the game. But
yeah, so there's another word for that, dude. It's called lying. It's okay, you can say it. Right? Nobody's watching. It's called lying, dude. Right? Because Ed Boon said in one of the interviews that everyone would end up in the same spot, so don't worry about that. Imagine creating an entire brand new universe where most of the characters are pretty much how they were, but with some DEI swaps. Even they fucking rock the same color palettes. The new era literally should have been all new characters. It should have been a completely different universe. Right? And that's actually what they should have done is the Great Kung Lao story. They should have done a prequel to the original Mortal Kombat, show us how they actually come to the creation of a tournament where people simply fighting decide the fate of whether Outworld invades or not, and show us everything pre-Mortal Kombat. But you can't do that. You want to know why? Because you don't have John Tobias. The only way that would work is if you had John Tobias. He is the only one that is capable of figuring out all the nuance and the nitty-gritty when it comes to the creation of the storyline.
As you play the game, you realize it's like, oh, it was kind of just the same thing. Characters just look a little bit different, but it's kind of the same thing. We didn't change eras of Mortal Kombat really at all. We just brought back PS2 characters. MK1 kind of goes down as like the Street Fighter V of the current era Mortal Kombat. But the difference between Street Fighter V is that that game was given ample time and resources and development to become something really good, to become actually a good fighting game by the time it hit its like third, fourth, and final season. The thing is, Street Fighter V also ended up becoming one of the better selling Capcom fighting games over time. It was a
good redemption arc.
They made it actually an appealing product. And what I hate about MK1 now is that if this stuff is true, and if we're like looking at a potential like end of days situation, it doesn't get that opportunity. does not get that opportunity to sort of like make wild adjustments or fix gameplay stuff or make cameos more fun and more engaging to use, you know? It's just, it gets its typical year and a half dev cycle, and we're moving on because business is business, you know? I think MK does deserve its chance. The only gripe I have is that arguably the best Mortal Kombat game, which is this one, is one of the least interesting games to play in my personal opinion. I'm just saying this wasn't a fun game for me. And as much as I can acknowledge how good it is and how high quality it is, the way it plays, I thought legit was unfun. And it just isn't a game that is fun for me at all. MK1's a more fun game for me. But this is like the ultimate MK game, dude. I just want that to exist with a game that I just end up gelling with. Is a hell of a lot of fun and also looks really good and has content that makes people happy, because the last time that happened, it was called Mortal Kombat X.
Did he just really say that? Did he just really say that the last time MK was great was Mortal Kombat 10? Really? 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 Don't worry. Right? Between me, Total MK, and John Tobias, and a whole host of other people that I can think of, we'll fix it. Right? But for right now, this current iteration needs to fail. And I think it is. I think there's no coming back from this with MK1. I don't care what patch they add in. They could add in 1v1 and it's too late. It's already too late. Right? When the foundation is already crumbling, it doesn't matter what you put on top. It's never going to be sturdy. Catch you next time.